Although the Freedom Seder is all about political activism and social justice, this segment explores several novel rituals and interpretations Arthur Waskow introduces to the Seder, including creating moments of silence and darkness before lighting the candles, opening the door at the beginning of the Seder and not at the end, reinterpreting next year in Jerusalem to have both literal and metaphorical meanings. The clip picks up on a discussion where Waskow contrasts a certain Hasidic rabbi who hardly spoke all year and the rabbis of Bnei Brak who spoke until the morning. At this point, Waskow focuses on the two unlit candles. And then what he does is he creates a new ritual before we light those two candles. He says, there shall be a few minutes of quiet in which all the lights are doused and the reader says, blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates darkness and commands us to meditate in silence. So as he's about to start the Seder, he's now going to light the candles, but they're not lit yet, and he takes advantage of the darkness. Then the reader lights the candles and says, blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the light of the fire and commands us to converse with each other about the departure from Egypt. So he takes light and darkness as an analog for silence and speech in a beautiful way. And I have to say, Rabbi, every week I publish the notes of our discussions on Sfaria. The most popular note that I've ever published is where I say that Halach Ma'anya tells us to start the Seder with the sound of a ha. And I talk about God created the world with a hey, and all we have to do is breathe out. And something about it has 6,400 views. And I think what he's doing, it's right here. I took a screenshot. So I think we're adding a new one today, another nonverbal ritual that we can add for especially those of us who love to meditate, who think that there's more to the Seder than just words. We can pause a second before we light those candles. We can savor the darkness and the silence of the darkness, and then we can light those candles and let the games begin, the discussion begins. Thank you, Rabbi Waskow. Rabbi Waskow. Okay. So I thank him for that. Then what he does is he says, everyone then eats this piece of parsley, then bakes the bittul matzah. And when he does the halach ma'anya, he says, let all who are hungry eat thereof, and all who are in need come and celebrate the Passover. He opens up the door at that moment. As our door is open, may not only the hungry come, but also the spirit of the prophet Elijah. Rabbi, it makes a lot more sense that you fill the cup of Elijah at the beginning of the Seder, and you open up the door to your fellow Jew. So I Googled, I said, is there a custom? And sure enough, I found, according to the Abarbanel, Halach Ma'anya should be recited at the entrance of the house with the door open, so that paupers can hear the invitation, enter, see Art Scroll Rabbi Chaim Velosky. I found it. Now,
that's great. Okay.
Have you heard that tradition? Have you ever seen that tradition?
But that's great. I'm going to share it in our Seder this year in Akko.
Again, thank you, Rabbi Waskow. We are just picking up new rituals, new ways of doing our Seder. Then he gets to next year in the land of Israel. And by the way, if you do look at that Chaim Yerushalmi book, you will see that there are Haggadot that say next year in Jerusalem, and there are Haggadot that say next year in the land of Israel. So Waskow writes, as the tradition says, Hashta Hacha Leshana Haba Ba'ara di Yisrael. This year we celebrate here, but the next year we hope to celebrate in the land of Israel. And as another tradition says, Ubi liberatus ibi patria. Where there is liberty, this is my country. This is my Israel. For where we sitting tonight in Jerusalem, we would still say next year in Jerusalem. For this year, not only we, but all men are slaves and aliens. Next year, we hope that all men shall be free. This year, all men eat as aliens in a land not wholly theirs. we hope all men will celebrate in quote unquote the land of Israel, that is in a world made one and a world made free. So here too, I will argue, Rabbi, that he's retaining the actual land of Israel, and he's also talking about a metaphoric land of Israel. And he makes an argument. He says, if you're reading the Haggadah in Israel or in Jerusalem, you still say, B'shana haba b'arad Yisrael. Now, some of the Haggadahs change that, and they say, B'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuyah. But they do it for this problem.
Now, Yerushalayim HaBnuyah comes at the end of the Seder. So, we have Yerushalayim HaBnuyah, but we don't start with Yerushalayim HaBnuyah.
So I think he makes a good point. And when you're in Akko, you're going to say this, I assume you're going to say at this point in time, B'Yerushalayim b'Shana haba b'Yerushalayim, which means that there's more than just the stones and the mortar, that it represents something. And I think that is a fascinating point. But again, I will argue that he does that not at the expense of Israel, but to complement Israel. There's a real Jewish people, there's a real land of Israel, and there's something that it is more than that.